you doing, everybody? Vasu Vadaparty here with the Make the Money and Run podcast. This is the Friday baseball show. We're taping this early. It's going to be broadcast when you see it on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube at 5:30 Eastern, 2:30 Pacific, about 2 hours before the American League Championship Series starts between the Houston Astros and the Boston Red Sox. Of course, Game 5 of the National League Division Series between the Dodgers and Giants resonated very well with across the country. I haven't seen the TV's numbers yet, but what a game it turned out to be. The Dodgers move on. They will go to Atlanta to start Saturday night against the Braves in the National League Championship Series. Of course, the two winners end up in the World Series about a week from Wednesday. Our guest, John Perrotto, longtime baseball writer. He's with sportsbetting.com. USA Today, contributes to USA Today, Baseball Digest, Forbes.com. He's done it all in the past. Been a beat writer for the Pittsburgh Pirates beat for the last 30-plus years. He joins us. He's been on with us a few times before. He comes in again to kind of break down the national perspective on the baseball going on right now as we have an exciting October coming in. Hi, John. How are you?
Doing good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm a little hoarse. I have to admit I was fanboy last night. You know, I'm a Dodgers guy. It was a little rough in the Bay Area yesterday. I did not go to the game itself. The other network had it, and I kind of just wanted to kind of just have it kind of low key, but it wasn't very low key as far as my circumference. So that's about the way it goes. But I guess we're all fans when we get into this business, right? So that's kind of how it ended up.
And it was a heck of a game. It really was, which was only fitting because the entire season series was so close. It was only fitting the last game would come down to the ninth inning and be a one-run game.
Let me get the national perspective on that because obviously I'm invested in it as a Dodgers fan. I live in the Bay Area. The Giants people have treated me well for 20 years. I root for them when they're not playing the Dodgers, and I feel bad for them as well too. It's too bad both teams can't go or couldn't play two more games to get in the LCS. What do you think the national perspective is on Dodgers Giants because they did come from the East Coast? Does it resonate with the East Coast people because these are late games on the East Coast for people?
I think that hurt a little bit with all the starts at 9 or 9:30 Eastern time. But I think it did resonate back here. I mean, you know, these are two historic franchises, and they both had tremendous, tremendous seasons. 107 wins for the Giants, 106 wins for the Dodgers. And, I mean, it truly was a heavyweight fight. I mean, it was historic to see two teams of this stature face each other. You just don't see that very often in the history of baseball. And like you said, it's disappointing it was a 5-game series. It would have been really fun to see a 7-game series. But yeah, I think it did resonate back here. I really do. I think a lot of people lost some sleep here in the last week sitting up watching those games.
No doubt about it. I think the Dodgers Giants, clearly two of the longtime baseball National League teams coming from New York City and Brooklyn as well, too. Now out here since 1958. You said both teams resonated well with the East Coast, but how about just in terms of baseball itself, the two best teams in baseball? A lot of things happened in the 19 games during the year that could have swung it either way. Game 5, if certain breaks had happened, Game 5 could have been in Los Angeles as opposed to Oracle Park last night. People talking about the Darren Ruff check swing in July, or at least I was anyway, if you caught my Facebook post, all the reasons that this game ended up being in San Francisco. But really, it was two classic teams that played great baseball all year, starting pitching. Logan Webb probably turned himself. I'm glad for the Dodgers and Giants. I'm glad, and again, I'm a little biased here in this sense, but because I know both teams so well. I'm glad that it was the only show in town last night because I think a lot of people got to see Logan Webb and see what kind of pitcher he is and see what kind of team the Giants have because you said they don't get a chance to watch a lot of West Coast games on the East Coast or even in the Midwest because of the time differences. So now, having seen the Giants and Dodgers play, and I know you follow the game already, so you probably know, but kind of give an idea to everybody about the type of teams the Dodgers and Giants have from top to bottom in terms of the way they play baseball.
Well, I think if you look at 1 through 25, the Dodgers probably have more talent, raw talent, than the Giants do. But the Giants, I'll go with them first since they lost and their season's over. What they were able to accomplish this year in the rebirth of so many of their veteran players who seemingly should be at the end of their careers, like Brandon Crawford and Brandon Belt and Buster Posey, to get the kind of years they got out of those players was really pretty amazing. And, you know, as much as Gabe Kapler struggled as a manager in Philadelphia, you can tell he really learned a lot of lessons from his 2 years in Philly, the failures he had there. And the way he handled those guys, he gave them enough rest to keep them fresh all the way through the LDS. And I thought he did a wonderful job. And also, Farhan Zaidi, he basically rebuilt the starting rotation from scratch, except for Kevin Gosman went out, signed guys like Alex Wood and Anthony DeSclafani. It helped a lot that Logan Webb really, as you just mentioned, took a big step forward toward being one of the better young pitchers in baseball, especially in the last 4 months of the season. So, I give them a lot of credit. I think they outplayed the sum of their parts. And, I'll give the Dodgers credit too. Everyone said, well, they have a lot of talent. Well, they had a lot of injuries too, especially that starting rotation. I mean, there were times there in the second half of the season, they only had 3 healthy starting pitchers, and yet they won 106 games. And I know having a great lineup helps. I know having a really good bullpen helps. But when you can win 106 games with basically 3 healthy starting pitchers, that tells you a lot about Dave Roberts and their organization.
Vasu Vadaparty here. This is the Make the Money and Run podcast Friday baseball show. John Perrotto of SportsBettingDime.com, our guest, sponsored by the Britannia Arms of Cupertino, Silicon Valley's longest-serving British pub and restaurant, celebrating 40 years of the best food and drink. BritanniaArmsDeAnza.com, 408-252-7262. Great sponsor for us. Go check out all the baseball playoffs, all the NFL, NCAA. All right, you mentioned the starting pitching. Here's the question. I don't want to go Shakespeare on you. It might be a little early for me on the West Coast to do that. But to open or not to open, that's the question. How about Dave Roberts last night with Corey Knebel and Brewster Gratterall, and then Arias in the third inning tried to turn the lineup around. I think Gabe Kapler obviously knew something was going to happen. I don't know if there was a leak somewhere that let this go. I didn't get word until the pitching change, until it officially came out about 2 o'clock your time yesterday afternoon and 11 o'clock out here on the West Coast. We thought Urias might be hurt. That was not the case. He came in and pitched great. Kenley Jansen pitched the 8th inning, and then Max Scherzer comes in the 9th and closes it out. And Cody Bellinger, Gavin Lux got big hits. We talked about Logan Webb and Camilo Doval, but how about the opener concept yesterday? I mean, this is not baseball we grew up on, so I'm a little, I'm just kind of, I still don't get it, but I guess if that's the way it's going, we're going to have to accept it. But to open or not to open, as Shakespeare said, probably not in any play that I know.
Julio Urias is 28-3 the last 2 years between the regular season and the postseason. Why you would mess with that, I don't know. And I know you say, well, the Dodgers won, and they did win. And I'll give Dave Roberts credit. It was a very unconventional strategy, and he really put his neck in the guillotine there by doing it, and it worked. I still don't particularly like it, though. I'm not a big proponent of taking one of your best pitchers and bring him in the third inning in relief. I could see if you were in a situation where you didn't have a strong starting pitcher, but Urias has been tremendous. He's had a great year. He was the only 20-game winner in the big leagues. He's been phenomenal in the postseason the last couple of years. So, I give him credit. It worked, but I wasn't a big fan of it. But it worked. And I will give Dave Roberts one other bit of credit. And I really like Doc. He's a wonderful guy. Going back, knew him back to his playing days. He did text Gabe Kapler late Wednesday night and say, hey, this is what we're going to do. We're going with, he didn't give his whole strategy, but he did say, hey, we are going to use Corey Knebel as an opener. And I thought that was a pretty classy move by Roberts' part to give the opposing manager a heads up, because certainly it's the right thing to do, but certainly he's not obligated to do that.
I don't see Casey Stengel doing that at all in 1952 at all, anything like that. No doubt about it. How about I have the banner up here, but how about Mookie Betts? I mean, he turned it on from Game 3. That Brandon Crawford catch, I added the at-bats up since Crawford made the great play in the 1-0 game. By the way, I'd never seen a game as windy in Southern California, and I grew up there as a kid, and I live in Northern California. We have our set of winds in San Francisco and in the Bay Area too. I'm sure you've been out here. You've been on some of these cold nights out here, so you know exactly what we're talking about. But that was totally unprecedented Monday night in Los Angeles. with that 1-0 game, and the fact that Longoria was the only one that got the run across, and then Gavin Lux thought he hit it out as well too. That was just something to see that night. I don't know what happened with the Santa Ana Winds, but how about after Mookie Betts lined out to Crawford? Crawford made a great play on that. 6 for 8 in the at-bats since then, in the 2 games since then. 3 RBIs in game 4, 4 for 4 last night. I think he set the tone, and I think he showed baseball why a couple of years ago, at least in that poll, that he is the second best player behind Mike Trout. And I'm not even sure where Mike Trout is in that because of all the injuries right now. But the fact is that Mookie Betts is a great player, and even the Giants pitching staff got to him a little bit. But the cream rose to the top with Mookie Betts yesterday, John.
It really did, and you can tell he's healthy now, which he wasn't for a lot of the regular season, especially in the second half. He had the hip problem and really had a hard time moving around to being the Mookie Betts that we all know and respect as, like you said, one of the great players in the game today. But, yeah, he did step it up to the next level, and that's what great players do, and I think there's no doubt that Mookie Betts is a great player. I think after he's established enough track record in the big leagues now that you can say he's a great player and potential. I mean, he'll need a few more big years, but potential Hall of Famer. And, I know it had to be a frustrating year for him because he didn't put up the numbers that he normally does. And that's another reason to say the Dodgers' 106 wins were impressive because their best player didn't have a particularly good season. But he rose to the occasion, and I think that's not a surprise now. We've seen him over the years with the Red Sox and now with the Dodgers. He's a guy who does rise to the occasion, and he comes through in the clutch. And boy, he really came through when the Dodgers needed him the most here in these last couple of days with their season on the line.
John Perrotto, our guest from SportsBettingDime.com. I'm Vassy Vadaparty. This is the Make the Money and Run podcast. All right, let's move on here. Well, let's what do you think about the Giants now in their season? It's hard to say that they need to improve on anything, but if you were going to go into 2022 just off the top of your head, what would you look at in terms of 2022 for the San Francisco Giants?
Well, I think they're going to have to address their rotation because Alex Wood, DeSclafani are both free agents. Gosman's a free agent, so they have 3. Cueto, I believe his contract's up too. So, you're looking, you only have one starting pitcher. It's going to be under contract here once the World Series ends. And I'm sure they'll work to try to sign some of those guys back. Whether they're able to do it or not, I don't know. Or if they go back to what they did last winter and just try to find reclamation projects and try to hit on them again like they did this year. So to me, that is the most glaring need for me that what Farhan Zaidi is going to have to do is he's going to have to somehow either keep that rotation together or get a new rotation. And the other thing, and I hate to say it as an old man myself, but we're
not that far apart in age, John.
Yeah. You do wonder how much more Posey, Crawford, and Belt, and they all had tremendous years, don't get me wrong.
Right.
But they're not kids anymore, and you wonder how much more they have left in that tank. Was this maybe the last hurrah for all 3 of them, which, we'll find out next year.
I don't know. I did see a lot of games this year because we were able to go back because I live here. Obviously, I didn't travel as much this year, but I will say this. Buster Posey did look tired toward the end of the year, and I think that had something to do with it towards the end. But, hey, this is 2022 baseball, John. This is what we're going to complain about as we get older here for however long we're here. It's going to be 5 openers next year, and then we'll have a whole bullpen of pitching staff. So who knows what the Giants are going to do next year or baseball on that matter for any reason. All right, great series to end on that. Let's move on to the LCS. The Atlanta Braves got by the Brewers. I didn't think the Brewers had enough hitting all year. It showed in the playoffs. Atlanta's pitching not that great through the whole year. In fact, they didn't even get to 500 until almost the early part of August, and they struggled all year. And then they got hot in August and September. Granted, the Mets and Phillies had a rough 2 months. No DeGrom, obviously, for the Mets, but their hitting went south, as did Philadelphia's. I mean, Philadelphia had a lot of talent, but they just couldn't put it together towards the end of the year, even with the acquisitions that they had. And Real Muto had a really bad 2-month stretch there. So Atlanta gets through, and then they get by the Brewers. How about Freddie Freeman? I mean, he's the engine that makes them go. Austin Riley, legit MVP candidate. Missing Acuna Jr. and Soler, Peterson, Duvall, all fill in nicely. But Freddie Freeman's Freddie Freeman's the engine for that team.
I don't think the Braves are a great team, but they're a hot team. They've won 15 out of their last 18. Like you said, they were 500 at the beginning of August, and they really turned it on. And you got to give Alex Anthopoulos, their general manager, quite a bit of credit. He went out at the All-Star break, and it looked like they really weren't going to contend. And he got Jock Peterson, and Peterson's been great in the postseason. Now, he wasn't great in the regular season, but what it did was send a message to the clubhouse like, hey, we're not giving up on you guys, even though you're a game under 500 here at the All-Star break. And that really seemed to rejuvenate them. And then you have to give Alex credit. Their outfield got decimated by injuries, and he went out and got a whole new outfield. He got Eddie Rosario. He got Jorge Soler. He got Adam Duvall after he'd gotten Jock Peterson. So, they're hot, and I don't think they're nearly as good man for man as the Dodgers. But and when we get the American League Championship Series too, them and the Red Sox just seem to have something going on right now. They have some really good mojo. And as you well know, the best team doesn't always win in October. A lot of times it's the hottest team or the team that gets a couple lucky bounces. And the Braves kind of have that look. And if I were the Dodgers, and I know the Dodgers have to be tired after that series, because that was a grueling, very emotionally exhausting series. And they only have one day off, and they're flying today. They decided to wait and fly today to Atlanta. And I just wonder what exactly they will have for that game tomorrow night. They're facing Max Fried, who hasn't lost in 12 starts. And, I could see the Dodgers getting behind the 8 ball and the Braves jumping on them and winning game 1 tomorrow night. And, I know in a 7-game series, it doesn't matter as much as a 5-game series, but I do think it would be a nice little momentum booster if the Braves took that first game.
Braves do have the home field advantage based on the virtue of winning the division and getting through the Milwaukee Brewers in that series. Very interesting series coming up with the Braves and the Dodgers. That starts Saturday night. No pitching matchups, no betting line yet, as far as I've seen on it. Have you seen a betting line on that yet?
Yeah, actually, one just posted here not long ago. It's going to be Scherzer starting, according to Dave Roberts, even though he pitched an inning in relief last night. Fried is going for Atlanta, and the Dodgers are minus 135, and the Braves are plus 115.
There you go. Well, Max Scherzer, we get the latest updates for you. I'm looking at it right now. I had a feeling Max Scherzer was going to start because this was his throw day. So I had a feeling that one inning, not up on my site yet. So I'll take John Perrotto's word for it. He's got all the access there. So Max Scherzer looks like he will start on Saturday night. All right. When we come back, we're going to take 30 seconds. We're going to talk American League Championship Series. Starts tonight. The Houston Astros get by the White Sox and the Red Sox. Get past Tampa Bay. They'll meet tonight, game 1 on Fox, 8 o'clock tonight between the Astros and the White Sox, starting in Houston. Framber Valdez and Chris Sale going for the Red Sox. Back in 30, we're going to break that down as well, too, with our guest, John Perrotto. This is the Make the Money and Run podcast, sponsored by Britannia Arms of Cupertino. Back in 30. Welcome back to the Make the Money and Run podcast. Vasily Battle Party. John Perrotto of SportsBettingDime.com is our guest. He's been with us before. Going to break down the American League Championship Series. If you missed the broadcast, you can download and subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. We had a good breakdown of the NLDS between the Dodgers and Giants, as well as the preview of the National League Championship Series that's going to start Saturday night in Atlanta between the Dodgers and the Braves. Oh, one last thing here before we get to the American League. Did you see the news on Mike Schilt yesterday? I was shocked when that came across. And I've watched baseball for 47 years. The only thing I can think of is that it had to do something. I don't know about philosophical differences, John, because that's the statement that came out. But I got to think there had to be something with the contract there.
I think so, too. Either that or somehow he got on the bad side of John Mozeliak, the president of baseball operations, because there was no inkling
Yeah, none.
going to
And you
happen.
see them 19 times, and
Yeah.
I could not see any problem at all in that Cardinal
No.
clubhouse. They got veteran guys and anything like that. I mean, that's just one that came out of left field, to use baseball vernacular. That just came out of left field. Nowhere did anybody, even baseball. I was watching baseball. I was watching the MLB Network yesterday, and they were all in shock when that thing came across around 3 o'clock your time yesterday afternoon.
Stunned. He's one of the best managers in baseball. Not only that, he's a very bright guy. He's a wonderful guy just to talk baseball with. I like Mike a lot, personally as well as professionally. And if I were the San Diego Padres,
Yeah,
I
that's
would get on
exactly
the
what I was
phone
thinking.
today if I hadn't already called him last night and said, "Hey, we're not even going to interview anyone else. You're our next manager." I think he would be perfect. He would, I just think he would be, his baseball acumen, the way he handles himself, the way he handles the clubhouse. I think he could grab the reins there in San Diego and get things straightened out after they went awry there the last 2-3 weeks of the season.
Yeah, very interesting set of circumstances there. I don't know if he's got any money left. Oh, sometimes they like to take a year off, so we'll see if that's
He's
the
got
case.
one more year.
But
Yeah.
you're right. That's the first thing I thought of when I saw that news come across. I'm going like, the Padres must have his number somewhere, because that would be the first call that I would make. Good call on that, John Perrotto, our guest of sportsbettingdime.com. All right, Houston gets past Chicago in the division series. Tampa Bay with the best record in the American League. Their pitching really let them down in the ALDS against the Red Sox. They both lose. They both get 3-1 series wins. The Red Sox and the Astros are going to open tonight. The ALCS in Houston tonight. Framber Valdez, game 1 starter, going for Houston. Chris Sale for Boston. No Lance McCullers Jr. All of a sudden, this injury came out. Forearm tightness. He's not on the ALCS roster for the Astros. That's a big deal for them, because I can't figure out which pitching staff is better, because I'm not sold on either bullpen. I guess Houston's bullpen considered a little bit better. Starting pitching hasn't been impressive to me all year, except for McCullers Jr. and I guess a healthy Chris Sale. Rodriguez did not have a very good year for Boston, and none of them did, really. This is an offensive game, and we're talking make the money and run and sports betting wise. I mean, do we just take overs in all 7 games, John?
Might be the way to go. That's for sure. McCullers, that's a big loss. That's a really big loss for the Astros. You can't overstate how much he means to them as the ace. I do like Framber Valdez. I think he's a good pitcher. I think Luis Garcia is quietly had a really good rookie year for the Astros. He's a good pitcher. I don't really trust anyone well, I shouldn't say that. Nathan Eovaldi has pitched well on both his postseason starts, but still, he struggled down the stretch until the last start of the regular season. If it comes down to the lineups, I think you're right. You go the over, because they both can slug. They both can hit for average. Probably Houston has a slight edge, probably just a little bit deeper lineup 1 through 9 than the Red Sox. But without McCullers, that really throws things quite awry. And I also, as I alluded to earlier when we were talking about the Braves and the NLCS, Red Sox just have that feeling. I have that feeling about them that it's their time. Like they're playing good baseball at the right time. I don't think they're a great team. I'm not even so sure they were a playoff team,
Right.
But here they are, and they upset the Rays, and now they catch a break with no McCullers. And hey, you never know. I'd be tempted to jump on the dog to win that series. I believe they're now plus 450 to win it all. I think that might be worth a wager at 450.
Certainly worth looking at. That's for sure. The line tonight, Framber Valdez minus 138. That's wrong. It's Houston minus 138. Houston 8.5. I got to get my editor, which is me, on that graphic there. But Houston minus 138. Framber Valdez and Chris Sale going tonight. Chris Sale struggled against Tampa Bay, but he can certainly be a dominant pitcher. We've seen him over the years, and to take him as an underdog in Houston tonight, depending on how that goes. I mean, Altuve, Correa, Bregman. Kyle Tucker's been red hot for Houston, but for Boston, Alex Verdugo, Kike Hernandez, ironically, coincidentally, however you want to use it, in the Mookie Betts trade. Nathan Eovaldi, you mentioned as well, too, former Dodgers, all playing for the Red Sox there in that series. But Verdugo and Hernandez, two of the key players that came in the Mookie Betts trade for when he got traded to the Dodgers a couple of years ago. Rafael Devers is swinging the bat well, but JD Martinez has been injured, and that's a big bat in that lineup. And I think that's where this situation between the Astros bats and the Red Sox bats might go Houston's way, just from how hot they were. I mean, they turned around leads in Chicago. I mean, to go into Chicago, I know they were accused, and Ryan Tepera kind of opened his mouth and probably excited the Astros a little bit, for lack of a better word. You don't put bulletin board material on, and Ryan Tepera may learn that lesson going on in the future to not say anything with regards to that, because that's a pretty quality hitting team, regardless of what your feelings are about the Houston Astros, John.
I find it very, very hard to believe that the Astros are still cheating and stealing signs, at least electronically. I mean, everybody tries to steal signs. After what they've been through, the reputation, it's been dragged through the mud, the big asterisk that's next to their 2017 World Series victory. I just can't imagine her doing it. And I could understand why Tepera might say something. And I know there's still people skeptical that think they're doing it. And I also don't think Dusty Baker would put up with it. I really think that if Dusty knew they were doing something, especially in light of the mess he had to come in there last year and clean up with all the fallout of that scandal, I can't believe Dusty would look the other way and say, oh, okay, go do it again. And if we get caught, we get caught, because I just think that they're a good team. And I know there's always going to be that taint there, and people are always going to question, well, how good are they really? But I think those guys can hit. And yeah, I'm sure it helped that they knew what pitch was coming, but they do have talent too. And I mean, a lot of talent, a lot of offensive talent up and down that lineup. And Ryan Tepera might have just
he might have put his foot in his mouth for darn sure. Yeah, no doubt about it. How about Kyle Tucker? He's kind of come on the national stage a little bit. He's somebody that I've liked for the last couple of years, and he's really starting to show the power that the Astros they do have power, but he really kind of amplified the power that they didn't have in the outfield the last couple of years. He's turned himself into a really good hitter, both facing both sides of the pitchers, both left and right-handed pitching.
You know, he really has, and he's a very highly touted player coming up through the minor leagues. One of the top 10 prospects in baseball, and a lot of the lists by Baseball America or MLB.com, the different places that rank prospects. He had a little bit of a transition period to the big leagues, and it looked for a while that maybe he was just a touch overrated coming out of the minor leagues. But boy, he's really showed even last year in the shortened season where it was kind of the numbers were hard to truly gauge. He had a pretty good year last year, and boy, this year you can see now what all the hype was about this kid coming up through the Astros farm system, and he's a heck of a hitter. And he's a pretty good defensive outfielder too. His defense isn't quite on the par of his hitting, but this is a guy that hits for average, hits for power, and he also has some decent speed, and he really has a chance to be a star or even a superstar type player.
All right, as we wrap up with John Perrotto here of sportsbettingdime.com, if I ask you this, if the Houston Astros and the Boston Red Sox do one thing for each team, what would they have to do? If there's one thing that each team needs to do to win the series, give me one thing that you would point to for both Houston and Boston.
I think Houston's going to need their bullpen to come up big. I really do. They're going to need Ryan Presley and Kendall Graveman to be locked down at the end of games, because they're going to have to go to their middle relief more, especially with Top McCullers and some of the younger pitchers. The innings have piled up on Valdez and Garcia, for example. I think the bullpen needs to be really good, and Boston needs Chris Sale to come back and be the Chris Sale he was his first 5 or 6 times out after he came off the IL after the Tommy John surgery. He says he thinks he's found some mechanical flaws that he's fixed. He's been on the mound every day since he got knocked out after one inning in Tampa last week. If Sale can be Sale and give them 2 really good winning starts, that gives them a pretty good leg up on winning this series. So those are, to me, the keys for those two teams, because they're both going to hit and they're both going to score runs, in my estimation.
If the Atlanta Braves can do one thing to win the series and beat the Dodgers, because they're not going to be taken as a favorite, obviously, in this series. The Dodgers are the favorite. The Atlanta Braves do one thing to upset the Dodgers, it is.
I think they need Fried, Morton, and Anderson to be dominant. I think that's their best shot to win is with pitching. I don't think they can go toe-to-toe offensively with the Dodgers, and their bullpen is okay, but they need those three starting pitchers to pitch well in this series.
And if the Dodgers need to do one thing coming off this brutal 5-game series to win the series over Atlanta,
I think they need a split in Atlanta. I think if they split in Atlanta, they'll be fine. But I do worry, as we talked about earlier, just not only mentally, but physically. I mean, that was a draining series with the Giants. And, you spend your off day flying across the country. So it's not truly an off day. You're on an airplane for 4.5 or 5 hours. And, I just got a feeling they might be a mentally and physically tired team going into Atlanta, and they're going to have to reach down a little bit and at least try to find a way to win one game in Atlanta, because if they go behind 2-0, even as good as they are, that's going to put them in a tough spot in the 7-game series.
Hey, I always like to quote old-time baseball whenever it's applicable, and even though it doesn't make any sense, he's still one of the greatest, but baseball is 90% half mental, according to Yogi Berra, right? And in October, you definitely need the mental aspect of it as well as the physical aspect right now.
No doubt. No doubt. It's a grind. October's a grind. You've been through it, and, as a media person, I've
been through it as a fan.
We don't even have to put on the uniform and go out and play at a high level for 9 innings every night. So it is a grind, and I think people who only watch on TV don't really, you just can't really grasp just how much October of, just the intensity, just everything. It just is like all consuming for the entire month for people who live through it and are part of it.
All right. As I let you go, what do you got going for sportsbettingdime.com right now going on? Where can people find you?
Well, I'll be doing the Braves and Dodgers, the NLCS. I'll be previewing every game here. In fact, my game 1 preview will go up here just in a little bit. I got to finish it up after we break here. And football-wise, I'll be previewing the Chiefs and the football team, the Washington football team, their game on Sunday. And then on Sundays, every Sunday in the afternoon, I take a look at the opening college lines and kind of look at some lines that maybe seem a little off-kilter, and also lines for some of the top matchups for the following weekend. And then I do the same thing for the NFL at night. So it's opening line Sunday for me every Sunday.
It's a great publication if you're interested in the wagering side of sports and sports wagering, especially with October baseball, the NFL, NCAA. Don't forget NBA. It starts next week. NHL also comes into play as it started the last few days. John Perrotto, our guest of sportsbettingdime.com. I'm Vasi Vadaparty, the Make the Money and Run podcast, sponsored by the Britannia Arms of Cupertino, celebrating 40 years. Check them out at BritanniaArmsDeanza.com, 408-252-7262. John, I always appreciate the time. Thank you very much. We'll talk to you soon. Enjoy the playoffs, and I look forward to our conversations down the road.
Thanks, Vasu. I appreciate you having me on. It's always good to talk with you.
All right. We'll talk to you soon. Take care, everybody. All right, everybody. Have a good afternoon. Enjoy the baseball playoffs, and we will be back on Monday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Charlie O, off his vacation, will be back on Monday with us at 3 o'clock in the afternoon for the Make the Money and Run podcast. Have a great afternoon. Enjoy the weekend. Enjoy the games, and good luck. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.